For more on this story, let's bring in Rob Shaw at the BC Legislature. So, Rob, prolific offenders, the touchy subject for the NDP government.
Well, that's right. The critics have called it a revolving door system for the better part of 2 years now. You heard the Premier mention success stories in Kendall's story. Don't know of those. The government has never articulated the success stories of its particular task forces. But once again, criticism that this is a sign things are not getting better. The Premier did lead that push to Ottawa to change the federal bail rules. You heard Kendall mention it. Hasn't stopped cases. It did not stop the murder of a young Surrey woman, Tori Dunn, last month, allegedly by a person in and out of the system on multiple weapons and violence charges. That led other premiers meeting in Nova Scotia last week to pen a letter to the Prime Minister asking for a thorough review of the implementation and application of Bill C-48, the most recent changes, and to consider any necessary changes related to both bail and sentencing. You heard the government's response in Kendall's story. Nope. Also today, the government reacting to a provincial court judge throwing out charges against a man accused of sexually assaulting a 6-year-old girl because it took almost 24 months to get the case to trial, exceeding the 18-month limit set by the Supreme Court of Canada. Also, to failures there to assign a prosecutor, a lack of an interpreter, a semi-retired judge, illnesses and more. Critics saying government is underfunding our justice system, contributing to the crisis.
When we have a situation where it's staffing issues impeding justice, it's clearly a failure of management. This isn't something that you can point the finger at Ottawa for. This rests clearly on the Premier's shoulders.
This is a horrible case. One of the most serious crimes you can think about, the sexual abuse of a child. And I'm sure devastating for this family to know that this individual did not face accountability for these allegations in a courtroom. The commitment of the prosecution service, the commitment of the government of BC has been to minimize the risk that anyone doesn't face trial in this way.
The Premier promising the Attorney General will look into that case. Just before we go, another quick correction from last night's story. In the riding of Courtney Comox, there is a BC Green candidate there. Have a look. Arzina Hamir, who is the Comox Valley Regional District Director, is running for the Greens in that riding. Apologies to her campaign for that oversight, Stacey. The actual candidate cutoff date for all the campaigns isn't until September 28th, so we're going to see a lot more faces from the 4 parties and the 15 island ridings adding into the mix in the weeks ahead.